Hello everyone, and welcome back to another WARNO deck deep dive, this time featuring the 157th Motostrelki division for the Soviet Union that just got added, and I absolutely love this division in ranked right now, so that's why I go with this first. 6 is going to come soon, and this deck here is really lovely for a player who loves KDA, and it is basically KDA 2.0 for me. And we gotta jump in why that is right now. Let's start in the logistics tab, where you get easily 6 CVs here, 2-3 availability cards. You even have another 2 here of the BTR 40, which is not terrible either. But the Stadion has more hit points, that's why we go with this. And Belajor is just cheaper and quite fast, so that's why we go with these guys. And then Urals and Mi-6 are great supplies units as well. Ural carrying 1000 supply, and 3 supply cards here, meaning that you can get your artillery resupplied whilst also having supply for your front line pretty easily. So that is quite nice. Then we come to the infantry tab, where you can see 70, that's a really high number, so you get quite a lot of stuff here. Starting with a leader, so 9 leaders in total. If you feel like you're fine with these 6, you could get rid of this one and put, for example, another reservist card in there, but I found these to be also quite helpful at buffing up your infantry with veterancy and pushing with your infantry, as they have 8 hit points, so that's how I use them. Bringing them in the BTR 152, as that even reduces the price of the unit compared to the Ural price and gives you a small little unit that can do a bit on the front line. It's not great, and you can't sell it, unlike the Ural, but for the initial deployment it's a bit cheaper and gives you actually a bit of extra oomph in the early game with having something armored that the enemy has to deal with running around. The Przeciwniki here are the next unit, and they are pretty solid as infantry versus infantry fights come. The RPG is terrible, like you can hope that it suppresses the enemy maybe a bit, but outside of that, it is terrible. But the firepower with a light support weapon and a sniper rifle is okay, even though both of them are a bit worse stats-wise, but still, for 35 points, that is fine, and you have enough military police and the reservist leaders here that you can buff these up and actually get some decent damage out of them, similar to KDA. Second card here goes in as well. Then we have the Reservisti, which have even cheaper price, and together with the BTR come for a really cheap price onto a battlefield for a unit that also has an RPG. They only have 4 rounds for theirs, even though it is reloadable, so they come with a bit lower ammo on it than usual, and it's the 7 VM, which is not the greatest, but with 675 meters, it at least can reach out there, and it has better stats than way better stats than the RPG2, so Reservisti doing a decent job there as well. More BTRs coming around here for the cheap price. And then we have the first Commandantura to buff all these Reservist unit. And this one comes in the BTR 70, because that is really helpful to buff up your Reservist vehicles as well, and go around with them. So BTR 70 here coming around as a buff to those units. And the Commandantura then moving around with the infantry, and you have a second unit like that with the command Ushlenaya, and they come in with PKM and SVD, a lot of firepower against infantry, so that is pretty solid. And to have something that can fight on its own, you also get 2 cards of Motostrelkis, one with the 7VL, one with the VR, really good for forced fights, and both come in with a bit more armored vehicles as well, so you have a decent amount of stuff going around with the BTRs, 70s, the BTR 152s, and a couple of old BMP1s, no smoke, but that is fine. Cost efficiency wise, 65 points for Motostrelki plus IFV that does a bit of stuff on the battlefield is really nice, so you're really down to the ground, you can get a lot of infantry out there really quickly. And yeah, ATGM, you need one, so you take the Fagot card, even though Conqueror's card would be even nicer, but you don't get them here, so taking them is fine. I'm not a big fan of the B11. I'm not a big fan of the Saperis, as with Reservist, then getting them into the shock range is pretty hard. So not taking them. The reserve Okrana is not really worth it. The Okrana VPMF is fine, but I don't have the slot. The last 3 cost slot is pretty expensive, so didn't take that. So I'll leave that out. We are on 70 infantry already, and that should be fine, even with them all being so cheap. Then we come to the artillery tab, and here I have some interesting stuff as well. We start with the barrack, which does its job okay. It has a good rate of fire for this kind of gun, so that is great. And it is quick on the move as well. 100 kmh on the road. You usually want to park them around roads so that you can move them quickly between their salvos, because their salvo goes a bit longer than usual, so they are somewhat vulnerable to counter battery, but they can really dish out the damage there. And yeah, they're not the most OP artillery piece out there. Like, the 130mm is still a bit below where it's super efficient shell-wise, but it does an okay job there. And then we have the B4, has a heavy hitter artillery, taken because it has a bit better rate of fire than the BRM5, and is also a bit cheaper. So, and still does great damage. Also has more range, so it's a bit more accurate and so on. So B4M here goes in there. And then we have the D1, and that comes with an MTLB, so it's even a bit cheaper. And the D1 here is great, as it is terrible range, not great rate of fire, but it is a good gun. 152mm is a good damage gun. So you can bring out one of these early and set the enemy under pressure on the front line with an artillery piece that actually deals a lot of damage. So this is another like discount cheap shortcut to getting some utility on the battlefield that the enemy will have to pay a lot more for. So yeah, paying 80 points for 152mm artillery piece is fantastic. You have to push it pretty close so that it actually hits its mark, but it can kill off ATGM positions, it can kill off all kinds of AA, maybe stingers and so on in the rear line. So this D1 really does a great job for me so far, and I really love the addition here into it instead of adding another BRM5 cards. I'm not a big fan of the BM24Ms either, so yeah, going with this loadout here feels pretty good so far. And then we have some mortars for the smoke, which you can really use efficiently with this amount of infantry to just get into the CQC, just having a big smoke field out there. And then we come to the tank tab, which has good stuff to offer as well. Starting with the IS-2, which is pretty cheap for what it does. It has a lot of MG fire, so it can help out against infantry quite solid with that alone already. And the main gun does decent damage against infantry as well. The rate of fire obviously pretty mediocre, but IFVs you can kill okay as well if you get around. And APCs you absolutely murder. So yeah, the gun is not great, but also not completely terrible. The accuracy goes down because of the reservist, but if you can get a commandantura close to it, it actually is getting somewhat okay. And for 40 points, the stats are pretty solid. Like, you survive a lot of things that hit you, like 20 penetration things from the front, like a Conquerors or so doesn't one-tap you, and that's really important. Most tanks don't one-tap you with the first hit, so the IS-2M here doing a pretty good job there, and that is the important part here. IS-2M can tank some stuff while it's dishing out decent amount of damage. The maneuverability of it is limited, so you really want to use them either as a defensive position or as a plop wave, because once you commit to it, they won't get out of there without smoke and only 35 kilometers speed, but at least they have that. Like, the road speed maybe should be even lower, like 65 or so. But yeah, the IS-2 is doing IS-2 things. T-55A is the next unit here, as that is pretty helpful as it has smoke and decent range, and it can be your mid-step tank. You still want to have some of those commandanturas in there, that's why they are on the deck, but these also can go nice in a plop together with the IS-2s, chilling behind the IS-2s, letting the IS-2s take the stress damage, and these guys keeping the shooting on. And yeah, they have a decent damage output with the main gun. And the frontal armor also gives them okay survivability for 90 points. Like, the stats are pretty good. Once you get rid of the reservist traits, it's a pretty solid tank. And the smoke is key. Like, even putting one of these into a IS-2 or T-54 group, just so that you have one smoke to hide everything behind when you have to retreat, is pretty important. So that's why we take these guys. And then T-54 as another kind of IFV, just supporting infantry and helping out dealing damage to soft targets, similar to the IS-2. It does the job a bit better, but it also, you can get 3 IS-2s for 2 T-54s, so that is a fair trade there as well. And yeah, that's why these two come along, just as fire support, killing off infantry, and also 11 frontal armor means this thing is annoyingly hard to kill for a 60-point unit, so hiding T-55s behind it is nice. And the best T-55 to hide behind these guys is the AM1. That also is really great for open fields. This thing is amazing, as it has a fantastic AT jam, and it's basically a super hard to kill long-range IFV. And that is what you want to play with this. Like, it's an IFV that actually can survive a bit of damage, and the ATGM really is there to snipe IFVs, especially. Like, if the enemy plays a lot of BMP2s and so on, you can one-shot them with these, and you can survive their conkers quite easily. So it's really good at killing those kind of units. You also win the 1v1 most of the time because your missile hits first, so even if you don't hit them and kill them, you stun them or stress them out, and that's why the T-55 AM1 here is a really good unit. It loses out on range compared to the AM2s of the East Germans, but that extra range is not so important for the main gun. The main gun is there mostly for HE, fire support, and there you can get in 2100 meter range easily most of the time. The damage is done by the ATGM most of the time anyway, so that you get a bit cheaper for a bit less range is actually totally fine for these guys as well. Recon is an important tab to keep your blob seeing stuff, and I first tried to stack with the Cheetah because currently recon helicopters are absolutely meta. Skific did do that, but I found myself lacking on other recon options. After that, I lost my recon a bit too often, so I currently play it with the BTR-40s, which are super important as opening units because they have anti-helicopter range, AA capabilities, and they do decent damage against infantry as well. So they are as an opener against infantry. And then we have the reserve Rajvetka as chunky infantry that can push with your normal infantry blobs, and the normal Rajvetka to push along the flank and get vision for your tanks and so on, and find enemy ATGM positions potentially. There is an argument for the BRM-1K here as well, to maybe put over the Rajvetka, so to have something of exceptional optics. I'm still figuring that out, but currently the Rajvetka feels a bit more solid, as you get a BTR-40 that has at least good optics as well. That's another pretty cheap vehicle that you can push with your big vehicle plops, so that's why for this plop playstyle I went with the Rajvetka instead, for now. AA, you get the amazing Krug. That is key, that is important, that is what helps you get air superiority, and that is just hitting hard. You want to get some early on so that the enemy never feels comfortable putting out a plane, as they just will play roulette. Don't forget to put a Ural close to them quickly, because otherwise they will just not get stuff done, because after 2 missiles they just sit there empty. So you have to be remembering that you always want to bring a Ural next to them. And then they are also pretty fine for a while, because that's 10 extra missiles for them, so they get a decent amount of shots then. Strela 3, not great, but it's dirt cheap. And if you upvet it, it at least goes into okay-ish territory, but still not great. Like, the aim time is insanely long. The range is not great against aircraft and helicopters, and the accuracy is not fantastic either. But it is an IFV manpad, so you need this out there. just to have a manpad out there. And then, since the buff, found the S60 actually being quite okay. It outranges the ZU-23. It also does a decent job against infantry. And the anti-aircraft range there is pretty decent as well. Now with the aim time buff, it can get a bit of damage out there. It's not a big damage dealer. It's I take it with veterancy because the accuracy buff here from 15 to 20 percentage-wise is so big that it is really key. So S60 buff here is important with the veterancy. But having a couple of these out as infantry support, having a couple of these out as anti-helicopter is pretty key in the later stages, as helicopters can be somewhat annoying here. Like, your Strollers are not amazing against them. You run out of the BTRs for these potentially at some point, and they also don't have max range, so anything with ATGM can kill them. So having the S60 here that can push along with your pushes is pretty key. So yeah, there those guys go. And then we have a helicopter with the Mi-8 TV that has a lot of rockets and can dish out damage constantly for quite a while before running out of rockets. The 12mm usually don't get involved. If they get involved, they help out a bit, but this thing here in front is not important. The Phalanga P can actually be helpful, and for only 5 points more, you absolutely take them. This one here has actually a bit more burst fire because it fires all the rockets quickly. But that's not super important. Once you get your rockets onto infantry, you kill it, and against everything else, it's more for the stun effect. So the normal rockets are fine. And the Phalanga P actually can kill armored vehicles, and if you stun them with the rockets, that also is easier to happen because the enemy then might struggle to smoke and so on. So the Phalanga P as a slow ATGM still might have time to get on target. Like, that's the main issue of this. The stats look decent. Accuracy is not great, but it's okay. Range is okay. Damage is solid, but this thing is slow, so you need time for it to get on target, and the rockets allow for that to happen. And then we have the air tap, which is another strong point of this division, especially because of this unit. The T10K might be the best fighter in the game now, outclassing the MiG-31 and the F-15 with MRAMs. So this is just great. The double shotgun long-range missile, having 6 long-range missiles, still having good sidewinders, and all of that for 260 points. So you mean you can always buy one of these on a tick and stuff like that. It's great. The only issue of this thing is that speed and turn radios are not great still. That's an Su-27 problem in general. That's the only problem they have though. And yeah, the T10K3 here, the prototype Su-33 basically, is absolutely doing a fantastic job. So this thing really does it. Su-15 is there for the speed, if you need to get in there quickly, and also you can get 2 of them quite easily. You get out there and shoot some missiles. You usually want to have both of them, or one of them with a T10 combined, to get kills, because you can't reliably get the kill with one of them with not having guns and the missiles only being 4 of them. So you want to get something next to it. But Su-15 in general, still a pretty solid plane. Has 10 hit points. 10 ECM, obviously not great at all. It will get hit, but it's a cheap plane, so that's to be expected. Then we have the Su-25s and Rocket and AT. Those are the really good ones. The Rocket 2 with the extra 122mm really gets stuff killed. That's great. It has a bit longer reload time for it, though not real. Though only if it doesn't get to shoot all its 80mm rockets. So yeah, this thing does a decent job. And the Su-25HE, that's just there to fill the 2-point slot and be an extra gun that you have, an extra helicopter killer, an extra ground strafer. The bombs can do decent damage as well, but usually it's hard to actually get good kills with the bombs. It's just there to fill another air slot and use the 2-cost slot on the air tap here. You could go for more air superiority fighters, but between the amazing T10 1 cut of SUs and the Krug, usually you should have the Sky Clean with this already. If you struggle still keeping the sky clean, you're doing something wrong. So yeah, this is the air tab here, and this deck in general is a fantastic and fun deck, and it's one of the longest deck deep dives I haven't done in a while. This infantry tab is fantastic, like strength, absolutely infantry tab. Other strength, good artillery tab with a lot of variety, and then the air superiority that you can set up with this deck is fantastic as well. Weaknesses, it doesn't get any heavy tanks, it doesn't get any forward deployment, and it also doesn't get good helicopters. So for a deck that is combined arms, that's a weakness as well, for sure. And yeah, the lack of modern MBTs and no forward deployment for sure is a big one as well. Especially as your IV, like you don't get modern IVs, you don't get modern MBTs, but that can be absolutely relived with the amount of stuff you can just bring onto the battlefield. So let me know down below what your experience with this new deck is, and see you all in the next one, guys. Bye bye, and have a great day.